the legislature has its own IT staff that looks after the, from your laptops to servers to everything else. We do provide, I think, your voice services to you. So, one of the big areas that we're involved in is the state data center. I know the chairman had the opportunity to go up and visit with us up there last session. I'd like to give an invitation to everyone. That is truly an area that all of us, as I think citizens of Georgia, can be proud that we've achieved. Is one of probably the best, if not one of the best data center in the country. With the standards and all that we make sure are adhered to there, truly help protect the citizens' data, and security is one of the key points that we try to make sure we're reducing risk across the enterprise.
I believe you now have a virtual tour.
Yes, sir. We actually have that on the docket, about a 7 or 8 minute tour that we're going to do this morning. So,
okay.
So, but we're in charge as the chairman mentioned. I'm the executive director of GTA, which my responsibilities there are more focused on the service delivery that we provide. But I'm also the state CIO, and there we're more concerned about standards and policies for the state that are broader than the 14 largest agencies that we serve. As far as actually providing IT services to. So with that in mind, we're truly looking for an enterprise approach and making sure that as a broader state that we're trying to help direct folks in a good, solid direction concerning their information needs. We also are managed state portal. That's an area that we're actually right in the middle of revamping and giving the state a new, fresher look, something that we can be proud of. Using some new technology so that as more and more people move to mobile devices, that we have technology that will allow agencies to utilize that and try to meet the expectations of a citizen who wants a more. We're all getting used to more mobile apps to find out the information that we need. And again, making sure that we have the foundation to allow an agency to leverage that to meet their needs. When I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the outsourcing. Tend to have lots of questions in that area from the committee. But the 2007 assessment is just pointing back why did the state move in this direction. We knew that we had a fairly thin staff across the agencies where everybody was just really looking after their own needs. The aging infrastructure there, the feast or famine approach, I think, from a budgeting process. A lot of times in IT, you need a more steady approach to make sure you're investing to secure, make sure that servers and all have the levels of security that they need on them. So a big driving issue was the risk factor when the state looked at back in 2007 how to begin to solve some of these issues. We had a lot of published standards for agencies to follow. Some were doing the best that they could to meet those standards, and this gave us a mechanism to make sure that we could actually implement and bring people to a certain standard. Again, we've talked about people doing their own thing, different processes across the state. We had duplicate spending where one agency was involved in the middle of a document imaging project. Another agency was doing that months or years later, and not really trying to leverage our learnings and trying to benefit from not spending the same dollar again to solve the same problem. And then again, the critical initiatives that just underfunding. A lot of times when you're trying to meet your business needs, other items in IT, such as security, would tend to get pushed back, and you would think you would try to solve those problems the following year. The state was not doing a very good job of disaster recovery. There's only just a couple agencies who spent any dollars in trying to make sure that they could recover what we call from a smoking hole, that if their headquarters where their servers were located, if it disappeared from fire or tornado or whatever, that we could recover from that. So when we take a few minutes later to look at the data center, that's one of the things that asset gives us the ability to recover. And we'll spend some time on that a little bit later. The privatization initiative really got kicked off in 2009 when we actually started improving our network across the state, improving, consolidating servers, and and beginning not only to consolidate some of those in place and trying to just take over the daily management of those servers in an agency, but started the process of moving them into the data center. I know that that's been, from talking with the team since being here for the past year, that's been a much larger effort than I think anyone had initially envisioned. A lot of that is just, there's a lot of movement of folks that had institutional knowledge of an agency's infrastructure that folks tend to move around quite a bit. Documentation was not what we had hoped it would be, and just the complexities of when things would just get sort of piecemeal added over the years made what we were dealing with, I guess, much broader. And quite often when you're in a project like this, you hope that when you move to the second person on the list that you can learn from some of the way the enterprise was developed prior and leverage those. But again, it's almost like it's like it was an acquisition when you buy a company, and the environments are just that different. So we've modified many of our approaches to try to adapt to that, which is why I think we're being much more successful in moving along our transformation plan in a much better way. Again, the primary reason that we started this initiative was to reduce risk. One of the benefits that we've been achieving as we've been moving along this way is the anticipated savings that was coming from the outsourcing initiative is right on target, actually running a bit better than we had anticipated it would be. I think across the life of the contract, we had anticipated around $181 million in savings, and we're running north of that, which is reflected each year in the numbers that get submitted for the budget within each agency's budget. And again, we have the opportunity not only to try to keep up with the changes in technology, but to try to bridge the gap that's been created over the last many years for the state. Again, where some of the technology that we deal with, when an agency couldn't run current antivirus software just because their operating systems were that old. So again, that's a critical area from an IT standpoint, is the fact that I can assure someone that we can protect the data that's on those systems. The next slide, quickly, disaster recovery. Again, as a state, we weren't doing very well with that. In the last probably 15 months, there's been 4 different disaster recovery tests, and when you look at a test, we were taking everyone that's within the scope of the contract, and not only simulating, but actually standing up. Our backup site is out in Boulder, Colorado. So we bring up a network there. We load our applications onto systems. We load the users onto systems. Because again, you're in a DR system, you're paying for a fractional share. So there's not a server out there that's just sitting there waiting for the state to use. There's many other folks spread around the country that will utilize that service, that location, if they were to have a disaster. So what we're simulating is if we lost our data center, or we lost in some of the agencies where the servers are still in their space and haven't been transformed into the data center at this point, if we lost the location, we could bring up again not only the server, the network, the application, getting users loaded so that they can log in, all the components of that. And in some key areas like public safety and all, I mean, it's just critical that you can recover systems and get people back online, and making sure that we have the data and all that get systems back up to current. And so that's a critical thing that we provide agencies that we just were not doing prior. Again, migrating systems into the data center is an area that so when I guess it's probably important to take a second when we transform someone, say I'll use the Department of Revenue as an example, where we've been working on moving a lot of their systems. We don't physically pick up a server and move it. We actually will stand up a new hardware that's new from the operating system that's running on it. The only thing that's really going to move over that's not new would be the application that's running for that agency. Now, they'll have application remediation to do, because a lot of that older applications just won't run on the new technology. So there's work on the agency's part to make that occur, but so it's a pretty involved effort of us working with them. They have an investment that they have to make from their resources. They tend to know the applications quite well, and so they have their team. We have to work with them to fit into their schedules to be able to achieve that work. But when it's all said and done, they're running in a new environment. So what I think at Revenue, where they were running on 50 plus servers, we're using virtualization. It wasn't available back when many of these systems were built, and so that may now be running on a fifth of what the number of servers that it was running on earlier. So that's where a lot of the savings is coming from, as we reduce the footprint that they're working on. Data encryption, another key area. Many of our agencies with federal requirements changing are required to make sure that data is more protected today. So the ability to do encryption is critical to making sure that we meet those regulatory requirements, and again, that we're doing the job that we need to do to protect citizens' data. On the next slide, again, just the consolidation effort, and again, I spoke a little bit about virtualization, but in this particular example, we took 91 servers and reduced them down to 10. So you can see it's a pretty dramatic shift as we try to embrace the advances in technology. Department of Revenue, there's been a huge project we've been working on with the folks out at DOR. So taking 23 separate systems and getting them combined down into one system. That's the integrated tax system that I think probably most of you are aware of. That's been a multi-year project with them. So the end of that project is within sight. I think they have a couple more modules that they would like to implement. I think that is scheduled for this year. So they're doing their work with their third-party vendor to get ready for that, but then we'll come in and actually make sure that the infrastructure, the hardware component of that, is what we'll look after in working with them. Email systems, we're in the middle of consolidating email systems around the state. So for the 14 largest agencies in state government, we'll end up on one virtualized system. So that work is progressing along. We've got a lot of agencies that are on what I'll call outdated email systems, such as the GroupWise and all. We've had a good bit of work with the Department of Corrections over the last year, to where they were having lots of difficulties with their legacy, their old system, and so it's just the uplift to try to get them to a place before they actually move into the data centers. Some of the work we've achieved over the last several months. One of the things I know, like in the legislature, when I speak to many of you, you're talking about the fact that some of your laptops are quite old. So one of the things with outsourcing that we've done is that that could be pretty difficult to use. So, but with our outsourcing, we've moved to where built into the outsourcing contract is the refresh of that type of equipment. So, so I'm paying for service for my laptop. That service includes many things, but a key area is that, you know, laptops travel, they take a lot of abuse. So we have that on a 36-month refresh cycle. So every 36 months, IBM, through the contract, will upgrade that laptop. A desktop on someone's computer is on a 60-month refresh cycle. But in that fee, you know, we're paying for the labor to repair that, the help desk if someone has an issue and needs assistance. There's no other charges involved with that laptop over that 36-month period other than the monthly fee that someone pays, which tends to give me the great opportunity to go out and remind people of that, because they tend to look at that price and compare it to what they could go buy a laptop at Best Buy. And again, I'll come back to the Department of Revenue. You know, there was 83 people on their payroll that were supporting laptop services. So if they had they gone out and bought a laptop at Best Buy, they've still got the salaries of 83 people, which is a significant component of what it costs to provide that laptop to someone. But an outsourced environment is different. So probably the largest thing in my year of being in this role is just, again, trying to help push the state to a new culture You don't have the person to go tap on the shoulder to go fix your problem immediately. You've got to go through a process, and depending on the day, if it's the day after a thunderstorm has rolled through the state, it's going to take us longer to respond and fix that issue, because it's more important for us to spend the resources on getting a call center that lightning knocked out the day before back up to speed and computers repaired. But that's not to say that our service providers have service levels. If they don't achieve those service levels each month, the ones that we have classified as critical, there are penalties attached to those if they're not meeting the service that the state needs. The only area that I would have to say that we have some Indian support would be at night at our night call center. If a phone call needs to come in and someone needs some support. Prior to, and that was just a center that IBM has that was there for us to utilize. It was not a request to have 24/7 coverage in our contract, but it was one of the things that they just included in their quotation. So.
Very interesting. I needed support on the holidays. First support started, then after 3 or 4 minutes we decided we couldn't understand each other, so we switched to some fellow in Canada. I was a little bit.
But we have the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Our calls are handled right here in Smyrna, Georgia, by an IBM call center that's located there. So I think there's 4 full-time folks that cover the after hours, because it's not a great need there. But again, if someone at GBI who's on the night shift needed some assistance, they have a number to call, and they would get pointed back to someone here in the States that's going to actually solve the problem. So I think a number of the calls that initially come into any of our call centers is someone has a password problem. So a lot of those issues are real simple and can get addressed pretty quickly.
Do we?
There we go.
Well, it's a miracle. They'll take care of this too. Okay, good. The question I have is you said you have a trouble desk that people call in for various needs. How many requests do you have on an average? Let's say on a monthly basis from the agencies on the help desk.
I'll give you a general answer and then actually give you the specifics. But I mean, there's tens of thousands of calls that come into to the help desk on a monthly basis. One of the things I did not speak to is the number of customers that we're supporting. We have well over 100,000 users that we're supporting, which is not just state government, but it's also local government. So, and again, most of that is where local governments are leveraging our network contract as well as our voice contracts. So if a local fire department who's leveraging our voice or network services has an issue, they'll call into one help desk. Prior to the outsourcing, there were over 20 help desks spread around, all independent groups, and again, part of the savings came from us consolidating all those help desks into one help desk. So folks have 1-800 number that they dial, and again, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., regardless if it's a voice issue or an actual laptop issue that you have an issue with, you dial the one number into the help desk. I think the last numbers I saw that over 40% of those calls are handled just on the call. The person's got a issue that just a person can immediately respond to and help them fix whatever they're calling in about. The second thing that's different than if you look 3 or 4 years back is we're pushing all of this new hardware out. Some of the software that's being put on there allows us to remotely. So if you can't, so part of the abilities is that the person at that center can get in and actually look at your computer, take over your computer if you answer a couple questions and actually try to get the problem resolved. That's the same way with us, trying to make sure an agency keeps their security updated on those different computers. Is we have software on there that we agree with an agency at the time. If they say, well, we only want our updates between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m., that we push that information out at those times that were, again, a lot of agencies, that wasn't as important to them, didn't have the resources to do it. And as, from an enterprise standpoint, there's a lot of thought and engineering that goes into how to actually achieve that. Part of that consideration is we want to be able to do that without involving the user. So our percentages on making sure that folks across the GITS program are keeping current antivirus software is in the 80-90% range.
Chairman? May I have a follow-up to that? Of those calls you get, is there a striking large percentage of those calls in a specific area?
Yes, sir.
What would that be?
The largest item that we address each month is password resets. And again, we have increased our standard of what a password looks like to where it's, I'm going to be wrong here on the exact number of characters, but it seems like it's 7 or 8 characters. It can't just be alphanumeric, and it forces the user to change that every month. And it's again, it can cause a problem. One of the things that we're actually implementing is a system where the user can actually just go in and answer a few challenge questions and reset that themselves. So that we're hoping that gets implemented here in the next short term. So,
Representative Martin has a question.
Yeah, if I, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I don't want to interrupt your presentation. And on the other hand, I have a couple questions, and I have another meeting which I have to get to. So I apologize and thank the committee for their indulgence. I want to be a fan of what we're trying to do here, but I still have concerns about. I still get calls, therefore I have concerns from departments, and I'm going to ask you if you get the same concerns, that we have downtime that is outside at least the scope of the contract, that as I understood it from the 2 vendors that we have, in terms of technology downtime and communication downtime. Do you have solid metrics from them that they're performing to their contract? Because I hear we have significant outages that have gated some of our departments.
well, and I'll answer that in a couple different ways. I think if you look a year back with our communications, the AT&T contract, we had several challenges that we were trying to work through. They have added resources. Again, I think it was just a maturing of trying to take over stuff that was done in so many different ways and try to get it consolidated.
And I'm going to interrupt just slightly there. You're on our team on this, and I don't mean to stand here and beat up the vendors, IBM or AT&T. They knew the deal when they signed the contract. They're big companies. They deliver everywhere. I'm not interested in their excuses. They signed a contract that said we'd have X uptime. The fact that they got on board and they had trouble getting up, is there liquidated damages? Did we charge them for that? Did we get the taxpayers' money back?
All right. Well, I think I was just trying to, on day one when you take over, there's a lot of work to be done. And so my point there was that they have moved through that work. The performance, they're meeting their, we call them SLAs. I can share those numbers with you. So the amount of effort and focus that GTA did in managing through the problem areas, is there going to be outages around the state? Absolutely. It's just 100,000 users, you're going to have issues you have to deal with. But I will tell you that that contract is performing very well, and the SLAs support that. The fact that a lightning storm is going to come through and knock something out, the key is how quickly do we recover from that. They're meeting the time requirements to do that. When they do not meet the time requirements, areas where the state has said it's important for them to do so, there are some significant penalties that are charged.
And we are that was my question, and we are charging them, because in the past there have been, in other contracts in the state, there were penalties, but we waived them because they were working real hard.
No, I'm pretty strict on the fact that
good.
If we do not, we don't meet a requirement, it gets charged. GTA doesn't keep that money.
No, I understand. I wasn't questioning that.
It goes back out to the agencies.
Sure.
They're the ones who had to deal with the pain of something not working correctly. On the IBM side, I think things are a little bit more complicated there because when the contract was signed, there was a view that it was going to take an amount of time to transform all that infrastructure into the data center. So I think if you look at our performance in the data center, that has matured to a very good point, especially over the last year. There's been a lot of work and focus there. I think, again, you got to some of the agencies, which right now we're working with the behavioral health. Some of that equipment we're working with there is so old, the remediation it is taking to try to get applications to run on the new hardware is an extensive amount of work. We're working well with them. But that hardware currently is not reliable. Some of that is so old that it's even difficult for us to get parts if there is an issue. So I think that's where we'll run into issues when something happens unexpected there, and then you're trying to find a part for something that's just so old.
Okay. Well, and please understand, I don't mean this to be adversarial, but I do, if you will, want to ask the question, and I'll close with this if I can. Do you have somebody on your staff when a State Department contacts us, or it's more that you run into them at another meeting and ask how things are going, that we can make sure they're connected? Because sometimes I'm going to tell you, I think it needs to be at the deputy director level in a department to somebody on your staff, because I think it gets lost in the, and you're always going to hear about the bad food. I mean, 100 people can eat a restaurant, 99 people are happy, and one has a bad experience. That's the one you hear about. So I have a one-off, view of it. But is there somebody that we could put them in touch with? I mean, and this is not a constituent calling me. This is a state agency calling that says, we're having to do this. We have people sitting, not able to do things because of this. And I guess if we could get them in touch with you at a, semi-senior level, that we could get to the bottom of it. Because when they're called in, the question of why this stuff is not getting done, they're pointing at the technology or the communication, and you can help us find where the buck needs to stop.
Right, and yes, sir, we definitely have a team of folks that it is their job to manage through issues. There's an escalation, very defined process. When the agencies aren't getting the response that the process should be providing them out of the contract, they will escalate to us, and it continues to get escalated up, especially based on the number of people that are involved in an outage. We dealt with an issue out at Driver Services where they had all their statewide offices were not able to process people walking through the front door. Well, as we, because of how large that outage was, there was a large number of people brought on to try to figure out what that issue was very quickly, and it ended up that someone down from their main headquarters, which is where their system was located, a cable backhoe took out the entire cable. So again, wouldn't have mattered, it's not just that our state group was down, but I mean the whole of the businesses in the area. So it was already very high on the folks providing the network in that area to try to correct that. But because they got us involved, it had the public safety element. The number of additional folks that they brought to the table to get that problem resolved was very quickly. So I think once what we've learned is that we need to be communicating more with the agency as to what is the cause of an item, of an issue, so that they're just not, they've reported it and then 2 hours it gets fixed, but we weren't doing a great job of updating them what was how we were progressing along. So I think part of our problem has just been communication, because when you turn it on the light switch and it doesn't work, and you're used to it working, and you've got people lining up in your lobbies, it can be extremely frustrating. Especially in some of those areas when it's not within your control. Now, again, we have routers that go out in places, and the level of service that we bought on some areas, to get a router replaced out at a state park in the corner of the state, the service we bought, it may be a 4 to 6 hour response time. So we're making sure, even though on some of those service levels, which may be more extensive than what an agency would like to see, but as a state we made a decision that that's what we could afford to provide. So part of that, I think, again, is communication. And again, where we're not meeting the service levels, not only do we make sure the penalty gets assessed, but there's a group that's brought together from a planning standpoint to where we're putting a plan together on how we're going to achieve those areas. And again, if it's not getting resolved, we have the ability to move percentage of penalties around within the contract to say this continues to be an ongoing problem, so we're going to continue to add more dollars to it until we get the reaction that we need. I would have to also say that I think part of our issue continues to be the cultural shift, whereas an agency had within the control to try to get something accomplished themselves, whereas now they're having to rely on a third party to accomplish many of those items. So the cultural shift of doing that is just different.
Well, and to follow up, and I understand a lot of these agencies didn't want to lose that, so now that they have, if something goes wrong, they want to make an issue of it. I mean, that's human nature, right, wrong, or indifferent. So I want to take that. That's why I want the sort of the validation of, did you really break your foot or did you just step on a rock? Perhaps not a good analogy, but you follow me that basically these things come up when there's been an issue at a department on a service level, and to be honest, I can't be the only one of the members of the House and probably the Senate that they're pointing the finger at somebody else. So I just want to validate. I think probably in some cases they're correct that the service level wasn't there. In other cases it wasn't as bad as they thought. Then they just use that as an excuse. And at the end of the day, the people that walk in driver services just want to be serviced, and the backhoe driver made a mistake. I mean, it happens. So, but I won't. We can do more offline. I don't want to take the chairman's meeting.
It's a very important area because many of the things that we're trying to be concerned about and provide are things that the person walking through the front door will never see. Now, if we were to allow the driver services information to be in a system that someone could hack into, and all of a sudden information's all over the internet that shouldn't be there, those are areas that we're working very hard every day to make sure that we're doing the things that agencies just weren't spending the time and focus and didn't have the resources to do. So I'm not lobbing something at them. It just wasn't an important, which when we're trying to take the broader view, we're not only worried about making sure the agency has the level of service to provide to the citizens that expect that level of service, but trying to move them to a much better place where they have a much higher level of service. One thing that I will share with you is that we're surveying every week 20% of the folks that we're providing service to. That service score is coming back. It's a 6-point scale. It's always between 5 and 6 at this point, which tells you that the end user is getting the level of service that they're expecting, because 5 is satisfied, 6 is very satisfied. So we've made an effort to make sure we're sharing that more with agency heads, and many of them were surprised to see that, because just like in my position, my phone rings because something didn't work right. It almost never rings for someone to say, hey, I turned the light switch on, the lights came on, everything's working great. So that's just in this area, that's just what we deal with. The other piece is agencies are responsible for their applications. And so that gray line sometimes, folks, in the heat of the moment, they're pointing the finger. And again, we do this every day. So we can be a resource in helping them to figure out that, hey, this particular problem happens to be your application. Here are some areas that you might need to go look at. Here's where we think the problem is actually coming from. So it's we have to work together. And I think you're probably correct. A lot of times those details do not make it up to the agency head, nor should they. I mean, they should be concerned about the business needs that they have on a daily basis. I think one thing I would like to do is maybe move to the video presentation before some of you have to head out, because I'd like to show you the grand scheme of things that when this is implemented fully and working correctly, we've got something that, unlike any other state, we'll have one of the most modern infrastructures in place, which will lessen the outages that an agency has to deal with. I mean, as this has matured, in some agencies that are fully there at this point are experiencing much better levels of service. The example I gave of driver services, I think other than their, and even I think their email systems now are all stood up in the new environment. So with this, Jeff, if maybe you'll.
The State Data Center operates behind the scenes, supporting the network and computer applications state agencies need to serve Georgians. A data center is not just a place to house computers. It has to be able to protect and operate critical systems without interruption. Georgia's data center meets the industry's highest levels of reliability and efficiency. IBM manages this state-of-the-art resource on behalf of the state, and we're proud to show you how it supports agencies in doing the state's business. Georgia's data center supports more than 125 state information systems, such as law enforcement, tag and title, driver's license, revenue collections, temporary assistance for needy families, and the state's human resources and financial systems. Knowing their computer operations are safe and protected enables agencies to focus on their business. Georgia's data center is built to be prepared for anything: power outages, external intrusions, tornadoes, fire, lightning, or cooling system failures. At first glance, a data center may look like an office building, but data centers have unique and essential features unlike other buildings. The differences begin outside the building. First, there's protection against external physical intrusions. The landscaping around the building includes berms and other topographic features that serve as protective barriers. Parking is isolated, and there is limited outside access to the building. There are no windows on the main section of the building. In Georgia, high winds are always a concern. The data center can withstand straight-line winds of up to 175 miles per hour, far greater than the wind speeds of most tornadoes in the state. The building is well grounded to minimize the risk of lightning damage. Special devices help to repel static electrical discharges from the atmosphere. As you enter the data center, it is even clearer this is no ordinary facility. Controlling access is a top priority. Anyone entering the data center must clear at least 3 security points before reaching the 30,000 square foot raised floor, the area where the computer systems operate. Few people have badge access to the building, and even fewer can reach the raised floor. Every exterior door has video monitoring and recording. All exterior and interior doors require proximity cards for entry, and records of access to every door are maintained. Secure areas, including the raised floor, also require biometric identification for access. The systems housed here have to be available at all times without exception. To ensure there is always sufficient electrical power, it uses a tiered approach. First is commercial power. Power comes into the facility through oversized transformers. The redundant feeds come from 2 separate substations, ensuring that if one of them goes down, power is not affected. Uninterruptible power supply, or UPS modules, provide a filter that protects against surges or uneven power levels. A panel shows the status of every breaker that is part of the UPS. Should it be needed, the second tier is 4 strings of batteries that can provide power. There are a total of 384 batteries, each weighing 430 pounds. The room where the batteries are stored is kept at a constant 77 degrees, the optimum discharge temperature. Deteriorating batteries can give off hydrogen, and monitors check continuously for traces of hydrogen to preclude the possibility of an explosion. Finally, there are 2 cavernous rooms that each house 3 diesel generators. The generators are capable of supporting the entire facility. They power up within 12 seconds and provide full building power within less than a minute. The generators are custom built, and they are tested regularly. 40,000 gallons of diesel fuel for the generators are stored in on-site storage tanks. The fuel is checked regularly for bacteria and other contaminants. Regardless of the situation, the facility always has backup power. That means systems are always available, even during maintenance. Computer equipment is extremely sensitive to environmental conditions, and the data center is uniquely designed to protect it. Most importantly, the equipment must remain cool. The raised floor allows for efficient cooling and airflow. The high ceiling allows warm air to rise, and servers are arranged in a hot aisle, cold aisle configuration, which enables more efficient airflow management. In the event of a problem with the cooling plant, the facility's 1 million gallon chilled water storage tank can help cool the building for at least 2 days under the worst conditions. The water in the storage tank is maintained at a constant 47 degrees. A multi-tiered detection system protects the data center from fire. Standard smoke and heat detectors are located above and below the raised floor. An air sampling device looks for early evidence of combustion, and of course, handheld fire extinguishers are always handy. Flammable materials are kept off the data center floor. If a fire occurs, the facility has a state-of-the-art suppression system that immediately goes into action. Nothing is left to chance at the State Data Center. Operations are monitored around the clock every day. The custom-designed building automation system features fully redundant central controls for the heating, air, electrical, and fire suppression systems. From its unique physical design to its secure operation and professionally managed systems, Georgia's data center is well equipped to provide superior service to state agencies. We have been able to show you only a part of what makes the data center an outstanding strategic resource for state government. Georgia has come a long way. I imagine that most of us know of situations where critical applications were run from servers located in makeshift data centers, even broom closets. Those environments have obvious and costly risks. Your data and the people you serve are too important. You've seen here how our data center protects against major events, like power outages or fire, but the advantages go much further. Your systems are also protected from problems that can arise in an office building, problems you might not even think about, like an overloaded circuit caused by a space heater in an employee's cubicle. The State Data Center offers the best in reliability, security, and efficiency. An increasing number of agencies are realizing the value and shifting their IT operations here.
Hopefully that gives you a view from the pictures there at the end, from the point that we started and where we're trying to move towards. Because I think it's important that we realize where we are coming from as a state, because the difficulty of what has been created over 20 or 30 years in IT infrastructure here is critical to understand that when you're trying to move from point A to point B, I don't care how much planning you do, you're going to find surprises as you move along that process. So I think Representative Martin, I know that transformation is a difficult process. It's a distraction for an agency. It's likely, as you start changing things, that you're going to actually create an outage. But I think the need to get to the better place, it's just a process you have to travel. I don't think any transformation process that anyone would say that is that they want to repeat it or do it again, because it's just a lot of hard work, and it tends to be lengthy. We've changed a lot of things that we were doing over the last year to make sure that we have lessened those impacts, that speed was not as important as trying to make sure that users had the uptime and all that they need. And one of the things that I hope the video sort of shows is that even though a lot of my issues is response time to trying to fix somebody's laptop or desktop, there's something so much more important in the background that most agency heads don't see or have the appreciation for, and they shouldn't. It should just be there, and it should be working for them. And so over the next couple years, while we work to get the rest of the agencies into this new environment, we're going to still experience some outages. But I can tell you that once they're, and we have a priority list where we are attacking the older technology first and trying to get folks in, but also having to work with agencies that have a lot of other big projects and needs that that they have to use their resources they have within their agency. just trying to make sure that we were scheduling this, because when we come in to work with an agency on just a transformation piece, we're there from 3 to 6 months. So it's not like we're in and out in a few weeks and that they're just in a better place. So I think some of what you're probably hearing is just the pain of transformation. And you're going to experience that if you're with a major Fortune 500 company who just decided it's time that they have a need to do this, versus a state where I'm dealing with so many different independent systems, it just makes it more difficult. We were working with some of the national organizations. Georgia's viewed as transformation is the largest and most complex effort going on in the country today. The good thing about that is on the other side of this, we're going to be in a much better place. We're going to have a foundation that allows us to start leveraging the mobility applications and all that everyone wants today. And but the biggest key that I would ask that you take away is the fact that we're going to have probably the most secure data across the country. And I know you don't want your folks that you represent receiving letters from the state saying that we failed to do that, because that's not good for any of us. So I can certainly talk about other things in the state annual report, or just maybe move to Q&A if you have questions. Okay.
Thank you, and you have answered many of the questions that I had, but much of our legislation creates even greater demand on our system.
Yes, sir.
Especially with motor vehicle and very much in relationship to legislation that it has to do with our Department of Revenue. As we increase and we continue to have legislation that demands new, I guess, the system to accommodate what we're requesting, that time element it could be critical. If this is a piece of legislation that is passed, and that department now has got to implement that. That is a question, and I guess the what would help me to understand how you're dealing with that is the communication between the agencies and their IT people. Y'all have monthly meetings, weekly meetings, or how's that information from those departments shared with you?
Okay. Maybe as we're talking about this, if I could refer you to page 17. We actually talk about Department of Revenue and the integrated tax system, which is a great example. Again, that's where the 23 systems are moving towards one system. And I think the last paragraph talks about just a few areas that's left for us to try to move through and accomplish, which is their alcohol and tobacco licensing system, excise tax, and contractor licensing and bonding systems. So fortunately, we're moving towards, I guess, the last year of that effort. And I know, again, as there are more demands that we say for that department to actually work through something that you've passed, that's why we've made sure that our transformation schedule is flexible. So we were in the middle of actually transforming them, and because of some other demands on their team's schedules, we've been flexible enough when we finish the last piece to actually move on to actually, we've moved over to GBI to allow them some time to regroup and get caught up on some of the things that they were falling behind on. So we do have that flexibility. We try to make sure there's a lot of dialogue there before decisions like that are made, because when we're in an agency and we learn so much institutional knowledge, when the team goes off to do something else, we lose some of that if we're not back there for another 6 months or a year. So I hope that addresses part of the concern. The other thing, as far as our meeting and working with agencies, from the technology component, we've got several different areas where state or agency CIOs are in meeting with us multiple times per month, and they participate as we have matured our governance for the outsourcing initiative. Whereas when it first started, it was more of, we're going to tell you what we're doing, and so for the first year and a half to 2 years of the actual work, it was more of that environment. So over the last year, we've put in a governing process to where here are decisions that we've actually pushed to the agency CIOs to participate in. So again, they participate on committees to make sure that they have enough information. So they'll select 3 or 4 people from the broader group to represent them on a committee, and then they'll connect to the full group of agency CIOs. So, okay, we actually sat in a meeting.
I hate to break this off, but we are about to get kicked out of this room,
Okay.
and we got one last question, short answer kind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, just going to tee up a couple stuff for follow-up because probably not enough time to talk about it here today. But a couple of things I'd be interested in looking at, and you might point me in the report, is what mechanisms we're making sure that the big contracts with AT&T and IBM are competitively priced. Anytime you have a big vendor like that, that's a tough thing to do, and I appreciate that. But some follow-up on that, and also some follow-up of what Representative Martin was talking about. SLA performance metrics. Do you publish a report of showing what the metrics were when they were met, so forth? Just sort of your sort of standard statistics on the SLA metrics. So that'd be kind of interested in that. And my last comment will be as being in this business, I appreciate how hard it is to make a transformational leap in the technology and to move to hosted services and away from sort of in-shop things. So I know it's a very tough job, and I appreciate what y'all are doing.
Thank you. I'll get you that information. We actually publish our SLAs on our website for everyone to be able to see. So,
Director Rhodes, thank you for being with us this morning, and we appreciate the presentation. And maybe some of the people who haven't been through the data center, you could invite them to
we would enjoy that.
Take that tour. Once again, I remind you, for those of you that would like a late breakfast, room 230 in the Capitol, Georgia Bio. Thank you very much.
Thank you.